individual level. So that's why I got involved, and I want to introduce you to Alicia. She's going to cover the crisis of isolation.
Hi, thank you for having us. I'm Alicia Newton. I'm the Executive Director for Nourish My Soul, and I'm a nutritionist by trade. And so when I talk about isolation, a lot of people feel like they're more connected than ever, right? We have this millions of people at our fingertips right now, like no other generation has ever had. And yet, when we ask people, a study was done recently, and when we ask people how many close friends they have, the number one answer is 0. So when you think about that, we're connecting with millions of people, and yet we don't have anyone that we feel close to and connected to. Versus before the internet, in the 1980s, people were answering that question with 4. The number 4 was the top answer for close friends. So we've gained a lot with internet, and yet we've lost a tremendous piece of what makes us humans, right? We need to have those connections. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the data around obesity and the health implications around that. I spent a lot of time studying that, and it's devastating what it does to a person's health. And what the studies are coming back with now show that isolation and loneliness actually are more harmful to your health and have a higher implication in your rate of death than that of obesity. That's huge, and we need to start addressing it. Some of the studies that have been done showed that someone who's feeling isolated and lonely has the same impact as being punched in the face in terms of on their health and on their stress levels. And imagine that on a daily basis. Someone who's feeling isolated and lonely, that's their normal. That's what they're going through every day. And we wouldn't tolerate that if we were walking out in the streets and getting punched in the face every day, right? So we're trying to come up with some solutions, and in our conversations with people that we've had, which have been numerous, we're asking people, who is it that's feeling isolated? And some of the top answers, which most of us can really find a way that we fall into these: veterans, senior citizens, teens and middle schoolers, military families, middle-aged men, stay-at-home moms, 20-somethings. I also work in schools, and I can tell you that in the middle school and high school, the kids are really feeling this as well. Parents of kids with special needs, caregivers for families that are dealing with family members with dementia, all of these demographics have reported to us high levels of isolation.
So that's the problem. What's the solution? We think that, well, first of all, I want to share with you the vision of Kearns Community Center is an intergenerational space that fosters healthy relationships while engaging us in the work of caring for our community. For those of you who don't know, we're hoping to renovate Kearns School. It was an elementary school in Granby that was closed in 2015, and we're hoping to create this. In order to address isolation, 2 important things are required. The first is other people, what Alicia talked about. And I'm not talking about, likes on Facebook, or I'm talking about meaningful connections, that space where when a person asks you, how's it going, you can say, I've had a rough day. That space. Instead of fine, which is what we most of the time say, because we don't have that trust factor with people. But you can create those relationships in safe spaces. Another piece that I think is missing, mainly because we're so spread out now from our family, is that intergenerational piece. Melissa just talked about older Americans and how valuable they are in our community and their experiences. That is being lost. Kids are, if we're not intentional about having kids interact with older Americans, all of that vast knowledge and experience is being lost, especially for those kids who don't have access or don't see their grandparents on a regular basis because of distance or whatever. So that's the first thing, other people. The second thing is we need a shared sense of meaning. with them. We need some work that matters. We need jobs. We need churches still do some of this work for some people, but most Americans feel like there are not a place that they can access that sense of shared meaning. One example, you may be familiar with Beans and Company, which is in Avon. It's a coffee shop that has opened, and half of their employees have special needs. And I was having a conversation with the owners recently, and that was a lunch spot prior. New England Pasta Company was a lunch spot. And the energy in the room before Beans and Company was get in, get my lunch, get out. It was hustle and bustle, and there was no connection and no learning people's names and what they like to eat, and there was no meaningful connections before. Same exact building now has Beans and Company in it. And the energy is different. People are not rushing in and out. They're coming in. They're asking questions. They're wanting to connect. They're talking to strangers. Why? Because they walked into that building with a shared sense of meaning. They knew they came to that particular place for the purpose of supporting a business who's employing people with special needs. So that's our vision for KCC. We want to foster those types of relationships. We want to bridge a gap where services are lacking. We want to share services and resources for the entire region, not a town-owned project or building or services. We want to share space and services so that we can support all of the surrounding communities.
Okay, so imagine a space that's fairly centrally located. We've talked to many towns, and many towns are excited about utilizing this space, where you can drop off your teenager, and while you're there, you can take an art class with one of your other children. Or a space where you can pick up the wheelchair from the durable medical equipment closet before taking your elderly parent to the cafe. You can come to one of our community meals and then visit the putting green and the indoor park with some friends afterwards. You can take a nature walk. It abuts to McLean Refuge, so there are lots of hiking trails within there. And you can do that while your wife teaches others how to build a birdhouse in our wood shop. There are so many things that are going to be happening in this building, and we've been very intentional about making sure that there's a space that everyone can feel at home in and have something to do. Even if they're not with their family, they're with peers or with others with a shared learning experience. So the mission statement of Kearns is Kearns Community Center empowers people to build lasting relationships, strengthen their communities, and share their gifts.
So Alicia mentioned conversations that we've had, and there have been a lot of them, and there will be a lot more to come. One of the things that you could do to help us that would be really important is if a group has come to mind like, oh, you know, this group really needs to hear about this project. They would have some good input. We would love if you reach out to us, because if we haven't already talked to them, we would love to share this information and get their feedback. We recognize the steering committee is 3 of us. Elliot couldn't be here tonight. But we realize that the 3 of us don't know everything. No one's done a project like this in this area. And so we recognize that this is going to be a big group effort, and there's a lot of smart people around that can help us and advise us. And so some of the conversations we've had since the start of this project, which was, by the way, over a year ago, we've been meeting with as many groups as we can, we tried to include everyone who might feel threatened by these services. For example, libraries and the YMCA and Parks and Rec, because we want to make sure that everyone knows we have been incredibly intentional about not duplicating services that are being done well. We are looking to bridge a gap for services that are currently missing in our area. And so I'll just give you an example. When somebody said to us, one of our big revenue generators is weddings. We host weddings. And so we have a space in Kearns. We have a gym that we're going to be converting for theater space. That, in theory, could be used to host a wedding. But because we're partnering with our community, that's not something we're going to market. That's not something that you'll see on our list anywhere, because we think that there's opportunities in our area to have venues for weddings that are already being done really well. It's just one example. The YMCA is another one. This is not a traditional community center in the sense that there'll be a lot of sports things, because we feel like a lot of towns, my daughter comes to Suffield for cheer practice. My son with special needs goes to West Hartford for some sports. So we feel like there's access, and the communities are doing those sports things really well. So again, that's not a piece that you'll see. Every conversation that we've had with these groups, we've walked away with valuable information. And so this is our proposals, which we will give you access to look at online, are a living, breathing document that has been changing and morphing into getting better and better as time has gone on. So we will focus on the things that we can provide, and we're going to do that by partnering with groups who are already doing those things really well. We're not reinventing the wheel, and we're not starting programming from scratch. We'll go over some of that as we go through the map, but just know that what you're seeing, a lot of those things are already being done. They just need more space or more access, or they need something added to improve their services they're providing. So we'll keep having those conversations. They're never going to be over. This is an ongoing project, and we value your opinion and your input, because we want to make sure that Suffield sees this as a really valuable asset for your town as well. All right, you're up. Get the map yet?
Okay, so I believe most of you have the map in front of you as well. They were available out front. And if you notice where the lobby and main office is, I'll walk through it with you. It's down on the bottom left. So you would walk into the building. To the left is performance gathering space. There is a stage currently in there. It's a gym right now. It was like the school all-purpose room. It served as a gym and a lunch room and performance space. We will be de-gymming it and keep the stage, but use that for currently Nourish My Soul is doing community meals. We serve about 300 people at those, and so we would be utilizing this space for that. There would also be some activities that would happen in there, obviously performances. Then if you go to the right, we have adult daycare. So that was a big need that we weren't anticipating when we began having these conversations a year ago, but it kept coming up over and over that people were saying that they were feeling really isolated because they were the caregiver for a parent, or they felt that their parent was isolated because they were caring for them at home. So we incorporated that into our plan, and that seems to be very popular. And if you continue down that hall, we have robotics. So that was something that came up in our conversations. Granby has an excellent robotics team that just made it to, I believe it was nationals. Yep. So they have outgrown their space, and they currently operate out of the school building, and the access time for that is very limited. And when they have these competitions that are coming up, they need more access to that space. So they would be transitioning in there, and 4-H now has robotics clubs, and they're operating in people's living rooms. So this would provide a space for that as well. And it's really, I'm excited about it because I want to see what these kids are doing, right? And I want to learn from them. So having it right there in a community space is amazing. We have a quiet room. That was really intentional because we do want to serve as a resource for families with special needs. And what we know is that some of those families can't participate in activities because they don't have a place to retreat to when they get overstimulated. So this offers that. And for anyone else that just feels like they just need to kind of decompress. But it was really intentional for that purpose. Meditation and gentle movement space. Again, we don't want to take away from all of the amazing yoga providers in our area, but we do see this as an opportunity for them to grow their business. Coming and offering classes once in a while in this space gets their name out there. And our veteran space, that would be operated by Resilience Grows Here. I believe they're very active in Suffield as well. I partner with them a lot. They have been looking for a space to kind of call home, to be able to have veteran gatherings and opportunities for learning and community engagement. So they're really excited about this, and they will be operating that space and coordinating it. We have the audio video recording studio, which GCTV would be operating out of, and we would encourage community members to come learn more about that trade and to record their own music and podcasts and all kinds of exciting things. We have an open community workshop that would be for whatever your gifts and talents are that you want to share with others, and you want to hold a class for something. We welcome that. We're excited. Durable medical equipment, again, that is being housed in Holcomb Farm, I believe, in Granby, and they need a more accessible location that has people available more regularly. So they would be moving in here. And then the teen center is big. We would be coordinating with Granby Teen Services and other towns as well, but Granby has outgrown their teen space, and I know the woman that is operating that right now is very excited to have a larger space where they can sprawl out and be kids, right? It won't matter if they get some crumbs on the ground or some paint on the wall a little bit. And then in the back space, so this is all one building. It's connected through that one hall. And when you move into the back, that will be the home for Nourish My Soul. I would be overseeing that space. We have commercial incubator kitchens. So if someone has either a farm and they have value-added produce that they want to maybe make jam with their excess berries, or they want to do stewed tomatoes with the bumper tomato crop that they have, they can use these commercial kitchens in order to do that. Also, startup catering businesses, all kinds of food businesses, food entrepreneurs can use that space. Teaching kitchens, we will welcome others to teach classes there. I will also be teaching classes that I'm currently traveling around. I was telling Melissa I have a kitchen in my car, and I travel around to different towns and set up and take down, and it's exhausting. And this would provide a space where we're still involved in the community, very much hands-on, and having people come and have access to us, yet it allows me to provide more classes, right? Because I don't have to be doing the setup and the takedown all the time. Be a more permanent space. Food pantry, the VNA is currently running that in our town. And their space has some access issues, and this would be a great location for them to be moving into. They're very excited about it because a lot of times they have people that are coming to access the food, but they need other services as well, right? So how do they get connected? A lot of these people that are coming for the food also need to be feeling welcomed into a community. They're isolated as well. The community cafe, I think I mentioned a little about our community dinners. That is a pilot program by our high school leadership program, and they rescue food from the waste stream and they convert it into meals. So they want to expand on that idea on a community cafe, and it would be a pay what you can model. And we're working with a national model on that. An indoor park. So if any of you have the chance to go visit Mill 180 in East Hampton, I highly recommend it. It's a great place. This indoor park would offer a space for people who really suffer in New England winters. I was commenting today, I can't believe it's May 1st and I'm freezing. To have an indoor space where you can run around, you can play. We'll be growing food in that space, so there'll be grow lights, which also offer that pick-me-up if you suffer from seasonal affective disorder. And there'll be a putting green in there. We can do movies in the indoor park in there. We also have, after that indoor park, some co-working space. That was a big need that was identified. A lot of people are feeling isolated working from home, and this would offer them a space to come and interact with others, and then also a conference room. So if you have a small business conference you want to host, you can use that space. Art classroom, we have Granby artists that are excited to be utilizing that space, as well as other people that just have some expertise that they want to share in there, or just play. And families with young children, that again is another demographic that's feeling very isolated, and this will give them a space where the kids can really just be kids and parents can connect. And then finally, what gets a lot of people really excited, it'll be the first one in this area, is a wood shop and maker space. That's kind of a lost art. A lot of people don't know how to do those. They don't have those skills anymore. It's not really being passed down. So having a space where you can come and you can learn that, or you can share what you know with the next generation, is a fantastic way for intergenerational connectivity.
Okay, so what's happened up to date? We've been working with Senator Whitcoast to develop a proposal for estate bonding, which Governor Lamont will vote on in June. That money will be used. It's a $2 million bond, and it'll be used for renovations of the building. You'll see in our proposal, if you look at the details, there are revenue generating items in the building that will be able to sustain the budget long term. However, the initial renovation cost is what we've asked for a little bit of help with there. With the state is needing to meet the deficit, and regionalized projects are highly desirable. With 169 towns in our state, many of which are closing schools due to low enrollments, Kearns Community Center could be a model for other areas to do something with these buildings that are productive. We do think it's really important that it's noted that a nonprofit will be running the programming in the building, will be leasing the building from the town, which is unique, and I think will allow us to be more nimble and flexible in the way that we provide services. Also, we won't have to be so siloed because it's not town-owned, so we can have that true regional model. Many people are already deeply invested in this project. Construction engineers, architectural engineers, designers, our core team, consulting, website construction, financial advising, legal advice, contractors, and more. All of this has been done to a total of, we estimate, about $80,000 of in-kind donations thus far. So many more are just waiting to lend their expertise to us at the right time. And most everyone that we talk to is super excited about becoming involved, which is exactly what we want. We want people to take ownership in this project. And so we've come up with some really creative ways in our proposal to make sure that there is that ownership, not just from the get-go, not just, hey, sponsor a brick and you help us build this building, but really take ownership in the long term for this project. The next steps are we're working on a lease agreement with the town of Granby. Thanks. The town of Granby put together a committee who has been meeting over the last few months to flesh out a lot of details and ask us a lot of questions. And they have finalized their meetings. They're doing an appraisal of the property, and then they will make a recommendation to the town of what they suggest the town does going forward. We're hoping that recommendation will be to lease us the building for 10 years. And allow us to start renovations of the building. We need formal support from surrounding towns. This is where you can come in. But some towns have done, many people have written letters to the editors of newspapers. That's super helpful. Social media, if you'd like to share your opinions there, that's always helpful. But formal support from towns looks like, it's called a resolution, and it's basically the town saying, I've reviewed this project, we've met with our selectmen, and we agree this would be beneficial for our town in these ways. It's nothing binding, it's just a way for us to let our legislators know that, A, we've done our due diligence to meet with the surrounding towns and get their feedback, and B, that it really is value added, not just for Granby, but all the towns surrounding. The approval of the State Bill 257, that's a big one. And then fundraising. The details of the finances I'll go over a little bit more later, but also the nitty gritty is all available online if you'd like to see the exact numbers and details of that.
Okay, so our staffing structure, we get a lot of questions about. We have, we've modified this a little bit. We had the SCORE, Small Business Association. They recommended someone to flesh out our plan with us, and they had recommended a couple changes, very minor changes. So we have the executive director, and then also the director of community engagement and communications. So that was suggested that role be combined. We had that separated. And then the director of facilities and 2 maintenance support staff. And our hope is that in some of these roles, like looking at the maintenance support staff and then cafe staff, that those roles can be filled with adults with special needs, because we really want to make sure that this community represents all of our community. Director of operations, floor manager would be in charge of walking around and just making sure that everyone is safe in space and everything's being utilized properly. Adult daycare administrator and coordinator with 3 direct care providers underneath them and a driver. And one of the direct care providers would be on the transportation with the driver. And then kitchen and cafe director, which is myself, and cafe staff.
One thing to mention, did you have a question?
In the map, and you mentioned special needs, but in that map, where any building says special needs, your adult daycare program is that, an adult day program. It's not a special needs program.
That's a great question. So she's asking where in the facility specifically are for special needs.
You're going to put them in a cafe, you're not in that building already.
I don't want to label it because I'm hoping that my child with special needs is welcomed anywhere in that building.
You have to label it.
Well, let me clarify a little bit about the adult day model. So the adult daycare, we are using a social model. When you say adult daycare, most people think of a medical model. So those would be individuals who have a medical need, they're homebound medically. A social model is very different. So there may be a person who has early onset dementia, but is not at the place where they need to be in a locked ward. Certainly adults with special needs would be welcome into the adult day center. I know a lot of people.
You don't have staffing. You have 3 care providers. You have special needs in there. You are not considering staffing.
So what we're doing is
So
our
that's
current
fine.
budget, the facility, that portion can hold 25 people at any one given time. We can scale that up or down, and we will scale the staffing with it. And that is a big chunk of our budget. So in other words, if we don't have the facility full, we can scale the staffing with it. However, these are the full-time paid positions that we're talking about budgeting currently. And we recognize that depending on the community, depending on the needs of the community, we're going to have to be super flexible. In fact, we have a board already in place that is meeting regularly, and they have already said they're going to continue to meet quarterly to assess, is the space being utilized, what are our staffing needs? And because of the way that we've laid out our budget and we've been so fiscally conservative, we can be super nimble and flexible and make adjustments like that. But at this time, based on everything, I mean, we've met with adult daycare centers in Windsor. Windsor has
Between adult daycare centers and special needs facilities. You have to understand that.
Yep.
An adult daycare center is that for senior citizens. It is not a facility that you would call for special needs.
Right. It is definitely not, our plan is not to have a facility, I just don't want to label it that way because the current budget and funding that we are dealing with is not at a place where I could say, let's take in 25 severely,
Not severely.
disabled or
Because
whatever.
You can put them into the cafe.
Yeah.
We're talking about highly functional,
Yeah.
special needs children, special needs adults,
Yeah.
that are higher functioning, but may have a medical issue, or can do things can be productive in that whole thing.
I would love to continue this conversation with you just to see what you're thinking.
Yeah, that's why I was just asking. You don't have anything initially in plan for that.
Not labeled that way.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
Okay.
That's all I meant. I'm sorry to take
That's
up
okay.
your
No,
time.
I want to continue this conversation in detail though with you later. So just a little bit about the finances. The annual operating cost is about $1 million a year. The yearly increase in operating is less than yearly increase in income. Most of the income is coming from the cafe workshops, events, and the adult daycare program. Fundraising budget includes a cushion for the first few years, and our fundraising potential is very strong, especially in the areas of grants, because we are servicing so many different types of individuals. We have grant opportunities that are specific for those groups, for special needs families, for veterans, for all these different groups. So everyone that we've had look at the plan is very confident in our current plan, especially with the potential that we have for fundraising. That is a link to our budget. Again, it's a live document. So if you're a numbers person, feel free to dig in. And I'm going to give it to Alicia to close up. That's it.
So that's it for our presentation, but we are very open to questions either now or later. You can go to thekernscommunitycenter.org and that will have a link to our phone numbers and emails as well as everything that we went over here in terms of the proposal and the budget. And we really want to be having conversations, so I do look forward to talking to her. That she ran out. But we do want to have those really hard conversations to challenge what we've come up with because we want to do that now before we're operating.
So I'd like to ask a question. I think it would be important for this community to hear just kind of high level, how much is this project going to cost? And the $1 million question that I asked, I waited till the end of our prior conversation, was what's the big financial ask from the town of Suffield? And so if you could touch upon it, because you've covered a lot of information, but this is a very numbers oriented, fiscally conservative community, and we want to hear the nuts and bolts and how you're planning on meeting these big needs with a conservative budget. So if you could comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead. All right. So our budget for the project is $2.75 million. And we are pretty set in terms of our fundraising for that. Our ask of Suffield actually is not a financial ask. Our ask of Suffield is to give us your input, what you need, and come use the space. We really want you to be integrated and be a part of what we're building. We had talked about transportation as maybe being a barrier for some residents, and if we can maybe work that out collaboratively, that would be excellent. But really, the only ask that we have of the town of Suffield is a town resolution and to come be a part of it.
And how much is the state bond? You mentioned the state bond. How much is that for?
It's for $2 million.
For $2 million, and so then the $750 balance. You said about.
So the remaining is Hartford Foundation has. They haven't formally committed to it yet, but we've been talking to them for over a year now, and they're very excited about it. They will give $300,000 as their cap in projects like this. And then we also have had conversations with the Aetna Foundation. We've had conversations with individual donors and all of the like Rotary clubs, Lions clubs, women's clubs in the area. All of them are feeling pretty confident about helping us financially as well. Am I leaving anyone out?
I think you mentioned that certain businesses were going to sponsor certain
Yeah.
activities, like the makerspace.
Yeah, so
perhaps?
for example, Ensign Bickford and Simsbury is interested in sponsoring the makerspace, but they also have a foundation where they give $10,000 a year. They pick a project and it's $10,000 a year for 3 years. And so they are very excited about this project and they're like, is your 501c3 ready? We are ready to write a check, so.
How about the ongoing annual expenses? I think I saw $1 million up there. Where would
Sorry.
those? The ongoing annual expenses of $1 million, I think I saw up there. How would those be funded?
Yep. So there's revenue generators in the building that are adult daycare, the community cafe, and then some programming within the building. We're not planning a membership fee to use the space. We want every single person to be able to come in and use the space in some capacity. However, we will offer opportunities for people to support the project on an annual basis. And there'll be incentives we have an incentive structure for those different donor levels for individuals to participate.
Have you done a budget for that? You have?
Yep.
There's a copy of it.
Yeah, Melissa has a copy of the full proposal and budget with all the details if you'd like to take a look at a paper copy.
Okay.
I noticed on your floor plan, when you were going over it, a lot of the activities that would be in it were designed because there's not space in Granby for those particular activities, like robotics, for example. What benefit is that to Suffield then if that's going to be used for Granby kinds of things? I mean, you really focus more on Granby than you did anybody else.
Initially, yeah.
And initially, yeah, well, so robotics, yes. Although I believe 4-H is regional.
Yeah, they're
Correct.
Well, Suffield has its own team with
Okay.
Windsor Locks.
And we would welcome, if they needed the space or wanted to come participate in any way, they would be more than welcome to. Those, some of those smaller things were based on needs in Granby. The adult daycare was a regional conversation idea that happened for conversations in Windsor Locks, Suffield, Simsbury.
People in Suffield, some people go to the Granby Y, and some people go to the JCC in Longmeadow. Why would they want to go here as opposed to those two facilities that are already built and have all kinds of...
Well, I hope they do both. We don't duplicate anything that the Y is doing. They're based more on physical activity, which isn't really a focus of ours at all. So I'm hoping that they go get a workout or go for a swim, play a sport, and then stop in and grab something at the cafe, play in the indoor park, or do an art class. They can do both.
The other question, $1 million budget, that's a sizable budget to maintain. That means you're going to have fairly substantial fees for people.
Most of the budget, if you look at it, the large chunk of the budget is for the adult daycare. So the expense and the revenue if that, for whatever reason, wasn't popular like we anticipate it to be, and that wasn't involved in the equation, that space would be used for other things. The budget would come down dramatically in terms of what it's costing us for staffing. But we want to include that because that was a need that we recognized. And in terms of memberships, it really isn't. Mostly it's workshops, the cafe, and the adult daycare.
There's some revenue planned for some of the shared spaces, like if rental of a shared space. You mentioned robotics. Don Radke said that does the robotics in Granby, and he would love to have a large enough space that they could do competitions regionally with Suffield and other groups. The problem is, any of the spaces they would use to do that currently, they would have to break down and store that equipment, and then set it up and store it and then set it up. But if they were to do this over like a tournament, let's say over a weekend, they would need a space that they could do that. And he's envisioning
Right. And Suffield has sponsored the tournaments for years.
Yep. Granby does have a senior center, and the youth programming is currently being done in the senior center, and we've had a lot of conversations with all of the area. In fact, most of the towns that we've met with, they've included Parks and Rec and senior center and youth center, and so we've been real intentional about making sure that we're going to be involved in those conversations to avoid duplicating of services. But the senior center is really excited about having the teens having their own space because they share space currently, and teens are messy and smelly and all those things. But so the difference in a senior center and an adult day program, just so you know, or I envision like our senior center is used by my neighbor who is healthy and spry and can hop in his car and go to the senior center and hop on a bus and go to New York with his friends. And the senior center is doing some amazing work that I can't wait. Like, how old do you have to be to participate? I can't wait. Like, they do so much fun stuff. We're talking about adults who are not able to drive anymore, adults who are being cared for by their children, special needs adults, other adults who couldn't otherwise participate in the current programming that's being available. We're trying to bridge that gap of services that aren't being currently done.
I'm curious, what is the town charging you for the lease?
We're asking, so the maintenance
I
cost.
thought you said you were leasing it from the town?
Correct. Yep. What we haven't finalized those details, but what we have asked for is a lease of $1 a year for 10 years in exchange for us taking the maintenance cost of the building, which is about $30,000 to $50,000 per year off of the town's budget. So that's the win for Granby, is that they would still maintain ownership of the building, but they would not incur any of the insurance and maintenance cost of the building. That's what we're asking for, but I don't know what they're going to suggest. We'll see.
It's owned by the Board of Education has its last say on it, or is it the town itself?
It's the town. So the Board of Education managed that building until the school closed in 2015. So now it's the responsibility of the town.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Good question.
Are there any other questions? Any questions from the public? No? I want to thank you very much for your time.
Thanks so much for having us.
As we mentioned, we'll solicit some feedback from the community and from this board, and we'll consider the resolution that you requested, which I am shocked is the only ask that you have for the town of Suffield.
That's it.
Thank you for bringing this to us, and good luck with your project.
Thanks.
So thank you. Okay. Next, I would like to invite Derek Donnelly to join us. We are going to do number 5, which is discussion and approval of the code adoption ordinance and refer to town meeting. And so if you remember, we took this up last meeting. We were able to review the documentation in the thumb drives that were provided by Derek, so thank you. And I'll hand it over to Derek to go ahead and...
Yeah, so very simply,
Sure.
hello. This is very exciting. So very simply, I think we had some concerns at the last meeting that folks wanted an opportunity to review everything that was done. I think we have given you more than enough information, and I hope this helped all of you sleep greatly over the last month or so. We have before you a resolution to adopt the adoption ordinance as presented. That's the 14-page document that should also be in your packet. How this works from a procedural basis, the Board of Selectmen would vote for in favor of the resolution, sending the adoption ordinance before a town meeting. In the future, you will call a town meeting at which to deal with this. I think the first selectman probably rightfully believes this is probably not the best thing to deal with during a budget town meetings. We'll call a separate town meeting at a later date to deal with the ordinance packet. By adopting this adoption ordinance, by voting in favor of this adoption ordinance, the town meeting will replace the current ordinance book with the new proposed ordinance book incorporating all the changes that the Ordinance Review Committee has recommended. And then just one final note, I think we touched on this before, but this was a question that came up after our last meeting. The planning and zoning regulations are not included in the ordinance book. That's not something that the town meeting approves. It's approved separately. However, when this ultimately will be put online, because that's part of this process, we'll have this final ordinance book available for everyone right through the town website. We'll also include the planning and zoning regulations as part of that, so it'll be sort of one-stop shopping for everybody.
Did anyone have any questions for Derek on the information that we have?
I tried to read your notes. Just, what is the repeal of an ordinance shall not revive any ordinance in force before or at the time the ordinance is repealed? I mean,
Yeah, so those
what does that mean?
those are not my notes specifically.
Well, I'm
The ordinance
blaming
was
you 'cause you
prepared
get-
by the general code. But what we want to be sure of here is that we are repealing everything and replacing it with this. So going back to some federal language you may have heard over the last few years, repeal and replace. That's what we're doing. What we want to be sure is we're not leaving anything out to date. So, for instance, when the 1986 code was adopted by town meeting, they left out reference to a number of actions that were taken by the Board of Selectmen and town meeting in the 1950s, doing such things as creating the WPCA. So we had a gap in the legislative history. What we're doing here is replacing the entire legislative history. So what the town will have as its code of laws is specifically what we have.
Oh, I understood what you're trying to do. I just trying to read this language. It was not clear to the layman. I had a suggestion. Is the town clerk the person who's kind of overseer of the charter and ordinances, kind of?
Official town documents, yes.
Would it
fall
be
under the town
reasonable to
clerks.
put, I don't know if this is fair to put in a job description, but annually that, there's state statutes that change. That's one of our problems, is that we get behind on state statute, that the town clerk's office reviews, things that have been passed this year so that we can update our book to keep it current. Because that's part of the problem, is we get behind.
I think that is part of the duties of the
Okay.
I-
And so we can hopefully put some sort of process in place. that
That's what I
makes it-
meant. So we don't have to do this, in 4 years, we're so far behind again.
Right. I also think I think in the charter, it may actually fall under the town attorney's description as well, although not specific, not perhaps that specific, but certainly it's something that should be considered and addressed. I mean,
Right.
it's fair to say, I mean, you're right, it's fair to say that there was not a lot of upkeep done over a long period of time.
Years, I think.
Coupled with, I think, because the ordinances were never in one specific format, there was no real process to add things. Typically you'd see things like in state statute, you have a section and then subsections underneath that. You'd have that in one ordinance, and then the next ordinance would have Roman numerals, and it just, nothing was cohesive.
I think it's great that we're doing this. We just got to keep it up as well.
Yeah, and kudos to Kathy Dunai, the town clerk, for finding this, the grant money to do this and to really get this ball rolling. I mean, we wouldn't be here had the town clerk not taken this very seriously. And her office identified that very early, that this was a real problem.
Okay, any other questions? Otherwise, we'll entertain the motion.
I would just suggest on the motion to do the ordinance as presented and not read the 14 pages into the record.
I would just
Sage
say
advice.
that I'm going to make a resolution or a motion to Board of Selectmen approve Suffield Code Adoption Ordinance as presented and refer to a town meeting.
Any further discussion?
Something like this, sort of a second town meeting, can just be part of the town meeting.
It'll be part of an upcoming town meeting, and we'll do our best to have some explanatory documents sent out well in advance for people and break it down a little bit better. I mean, I think Derek did a good job last time saying that this is really a lot of housekeeping. And then the next steps going forward will be to have the specific commissions reviewing things that really need to be taken apart and considered for future planning for the town. So we'll try to do a really good job of explaining that to the town.
I would also sort of envision, just to follow up on that, I would envision having a lot of explanatory documents, sort of big boards available to people coming to the town meeting that they can spend some time looking at before they vote, things like that. I mean, it is a little daunting, a little confusing to say to people, hey, we're going to replace our entire town code in one town meeting, but don't worry about it. It's just technical.
Well,
so.
most people don't even know we probably have them.
Right.
And I think another thing we can do is if we charge each of the commissions to look for things that they want changed or think should be changed, on top of the town clerk looking for those new state laws and things like that. If we do it once a year, like Mel said and Melissa said, it'll be a much easier process instead of the thousands of man hours that you and the volunteers did replacing that entire code.
Yeah, I do think a formalized process is important. And I also think, as we talked about at the last meeting, this is the first step. So, as far as other commissions go, we know there's some work that needs to be done. For instance, the retirement code, we'll need their input to revise that ordinance. We're not touching those things now. Those are things that need to be done in the future. And that's really going to be up to individual boards. I think, the upcoming charter revision process also, I think, can play a part in helping to identify some areas where we're deficient here. I've been keeping a list as we've gone through this. I think, and I know Melissa has as well. So there's a number of things that this is a starting point for a much broader renovation of the way the government operates.
And some of the commissions have even numbers.
Right. Right. So exactly. So we don't have, you'll note in here, we don't have a police commission ordinance. I think, I can't remember if I answered your email, Mel, but you had asked about the police commission at one point. So our police commission is actually a creation of the state legislature and not of the town. This dates back before we had a code of ordinances. This was a special act of the legislature. So we worked with, or are working with Representative Zawistowski this year to introduce legislation, which has actually been raised by committee, to allow towns in our position to pass an ordinance so that we can codify that and bring it up to code. We have a police commission established by state statute, by act of the legislature, and then a corresponding statute that says where you don't comply that with what the legislature did. So we've got some work to do and some housekeeping, and identifying those things and trying to correct them at a state level is also important too.
Okay, we have a motion. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great. Thank you. Okay,
Thank
the
you.
next few items have to do with some funding transfer. Item number 6 is discussion and approval of transfer of funds from contingency to Sunrise Park Superintendent's residence septic system in the amount of $35,000 and refer to the Board of Finance. So if you look in your packet, you will see that we had an emergency situation was discovered last week regarding the operation of the septic system at the Sunrise Park House. I will spare you the details. However, I strongly recommend that we fund this change, considering the fact that we have camp, coming up, people utilizing the facilities at Sunrise, and this is just something that we need to do. This is exactly what contingency is for these unexpected minor catastrophes to be covered. And so
So this is just for the house? though?
this is
That's the house where they live?
correct. Yep. We don't, I don't know if it'll impact other things, but it's, correct. A problem was noticed when the annual pump out of the septic system at the superintendent's residence, and the system was experiencing effluent surfacing. This is a potential health issue and cannot wait until the new fiscal year. Say no more.
All right, well, I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
To transfer $35,000 from contingency to the Sunrise Park Superintendent's residence septic system.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The next item is the discussion and approval of a transfer of funds from the assessor's revaluation to epoxy all fire station floors in the amount of $10,000 and refer to the Board of Finance. So number 7, sorry, yep.
So we have that extra money in the...
We do, exactly. We have extra money in the revaluation account, and so the net financial impact of the town will be 0. We're just moving some money around where we had a little more budgeted and we had a little too little budgeted in another item. So the total cost of the epoxy floor project was $50,000, which included moisture testing, prep work, and painting. The change order cost for the addition of cove base is an additional $8,286, and so they're requesting the $10,000 to cover any additional costs. And as you know, this is a safety requirement. The floors at the 4 firehouses are being coated because they're very, very slippery. And so obviously they get wet and they're even more slippery, and we want to protect our firefighters. Yes.
I remember the large animal facility.
Yes. Mm-hmm. That was, I think, if I recall, the animals didn't like the coating on the floor. There was some sort of problem with it, and yes, yep. And someone decided to call the people that did the floor, and they came out and did it again, and now there's no problem. So it didn't even cost us any money, which is great.
Well, let's not use the same people.
Yeah, well, I'm going to hope that the firefighters will respond differently than the animals in the large animal facility. So again, this is a safety situation, and kudos to Public Works because they've been getting lots of projects ready to roll.
How did this slip through the cracks, or was there?
It was just the original estimate in capital was too low.
Okay.
Was too low. Yeah.
Well, I'll make a motion to transfer $10,000 from the assessor's revaluation to the epoxy all fire station floors.
In the amount of $10,000 and refer to the Board of Finance. Great. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Great, thank you. Number 8, discussion and approval of a transfer of funds from Babs Beach Septic Project to Babs Beach Stairway Project in the amount of $25,000 and refer to the Board of Finance. So this is the continuing steady progress we're making at Babs. The background is a concrete paver block stairway has been designed for Babs Beach. If you remember, it goes from the top down to the newly restored beach area. It will be located to the north of the new platform deck and continue down the hill to the lower parking area at the beach. The original estimate for the project was $30,000, and it was approved in the fiscal year 2018 ACE budget. Since that time, the scope of the plan has grown when it was determined that 2 handrails will be required to meet ADA standards. And so the project was rebid on April 25th, and the lowest result came in at $50,000. Again, their financial impact will be none, and that's what we need.
We don't need that money in the septic project there?
No, because it's going to be deferred. We're not doing it right now, and
We're not doing the septic?
we're not doing the septic project right now. It's kind of a continuing process. There is no bathrooms right now. The water line is going in. If you remember, we have we're funding some in ACE this coming fiscal year, and we have a grant of, I believe, 75,000, Bill, tell me, yep, that we're going to be utilizing to get the water line in. And then the next phase, I believe it'll be $25,000, 25 at this current minute to put the septic in, perhaps, maybe not. Okay, yep. There was some other water requirements. Yes, yep. As we progress with this renovation, every year we kind of do another little piece, and this is where we're at. And so for safety purposes, people are kind of scaling the pretty steep hill there, and so it'll be really a good safety improvement to get these stairs in.
All right, well, I'll make the motion to transfer $25,000 from the Babs Beach septic project to the Babs Beach stairway project.
And refer to the Board of Finance? Great. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Great. All right, number 9 is discussion and adoption of the Remington Street Bridge Replacement Project Declaration of Official Intent. So this is for tax purposes. Tim can probably explain this better than I can. It was required by our bond attorney, Sandra Dawson, that if the Board of Finance, who has been discussing ways to fund the local share of the Remington Street Bridge, which is $640,000, to allow the flexibility to roll this into an upcoming bond issuance, we need to adopt this resolution. And so it's really just to allow us a lot of flexibility in our financing of the $640,000 local share. So this is requested by the Board of Finance to go forward with.
Tim, you're on.
I got to read this whole resolution?
Sure.
Would anyone else like to read?
Okay, I'll,
Okay. Well, oh, Pete,
I'll do it.
Pete's gonna-
I'm right here.
Pete's gonna take it.
All right.
Over a month.
As I put my cheaters on. Resolution of official intent to reimburse expenditures with bond proceeds for costs related to the Remington Street Bridge Replacement Project. Resolved that the town of Suffield, Connecticut, the town, hereby declares its official intent under section 1.150-2 of the federal income tax regulations, the Treasury regulations, that project costs may be paid from temporary advances of available funds, which are paid within 60 days prior to any time after the date of passage of this resolution, and the maximum amount of $640,000 for costs related to the reconstruction or replacement of the Remington Street Bridge, the project, and that the town reasonably expects to reimburse any such advances from the proceeds of bonds, notes, or other obligations, in an aggregate principal amount not in excess of $640,000 for the project. Such obligations shall be issued to reimburse such expenditures not later than 18 months after the later of the date of the expenditure or the substantial completion of the project, or such later date the Treasury regulations may authorize the treasurer or designee is authorized to pay expenses of the project in accordance herewith, pending the issuance of reimbursement obligations. The town is authorized to amend this declaration of official intent except as to the maximum amount as they deem necessary or advisable, and to bind the town pursuant to such representations and covenants as they deem necessary or advisable in order to maintain the continued exemption from federal income taxation of interest on the obligations. This resolution is adopted solely for the purpose of compliance with the Treasury regulations and may not be used or relied on for any other purpose.
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes.
Tim, just why is there a tax thing? I don't know that.
Yeah.
I would think to make it more attractive to people.
So this is for the investors who buy the bonds?
Probably, yeah, to make it tax exempt. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. Next,
I make a motion to table item number 10.
And the reason why we need to do this is because some additional comments are being provided to CROG regarding our natural hazard mitigation plan, and so we're going to wait till we get that settled up, right, Bill? Great. And so we'll take it up another time. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All righty, that's number 10. Number 11, discussion and appointment of alternate member to the Parks and Recreation Commission to fill the remainder of Jade Bombard's term through June 30th, 2019, and reappoint through June 30th, 2023. And so, again, because this will expire in the better part of 2 months, we're going to go ahead and extend it for the rest of the 4 years. Okay, so,
Who are we appointing?
yep, you can look, there's a couple of no, it's not Jay, it's, Jay's going off. So if you look, you have resumes there. There are a couple of choices. I can tell you the current members are Brian Casangino is the chair, William Bosher is the vice chair, Leanne Burke is the clerk, Lou Casangino, Dave Rusnak, Jay Bombard, who is stepping down, Stephanie Dolan, Andrew Jolly is an alternate, and Jay, wait a minute, I have Jay twice. I don't know. Pardon me?
He's going up to,
Bill Gorilla's stepping down, and Jay Bombard was an alternate.
and he wants to go up. That's the way I,
Oh, did I read it wrong? Hold on.
yes, he wants.
We're filling Jay's alternate spot.
Okay, so, I see, that's why I see it twice. Okay, so Jay has already been moved into the full position to replace, so he's not stepping down, he's stepping up. Okay, got it. And so now we are replacing Jay Bombard's alternate position. Thank you. Okay, and so currently, the current composition, 4 Democrats, 1 Republican, and 2 unaffiliated members for a total of 7 people. Got it. Okay, so now we have 2 people to be considered. You have 2 resumes there, and so I will entertain some nominations, if anyone would like to make one.
We only have one recommendation. We only have Sam.
Sam and Beth Crazy.
We don't have a resume.
You should.
I'll nominate Sam Lombardo. I don't know him. I hear him as a student.
Yeah. I can say that Sam was endorsed by the Republican Town Committee, and then Beth Kreisman from Suffield Academy was recommended by the Democratic Town Committee. And so,
Well, there's only one Republican on there now. 4 Democrats, 3 unaffiliated, so that's why I'm going to nominate Sam Lombardo.
okay, we have a nomination for Sam Lombardo. Is there any discussion?
There's only one position.
There is one position. So
Jay's already up there.
Jay is already up. Yep, he's in the full position, and this is an alternate position. And so I do not know Sam. I think his resume looks wonderful. I would love to keep him on our list. However, I feel strongly that Beth would really add a lot of value to the commission at this time, being because she is the cross-country coach at Suffield Academy, and she has significant experience in there. And I know that one of Pete Leclerc's goals is to really expand our running events. Oh my gosh, why can't I remember
5K
the
programs.
5K? Our exactly. Clearly, I'm not a runner. And expand more running opportunities in town. And I think that she would be very helpful for that because of the community that she has and because of her experience in there. And so that's why I would recommend appointing her at this time, but I defer to the wishes of this group. So, having said that, is there any other discussion?
I do know Sam.
Yep, the nomination on the floor is for Sam Lombardo. So, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3. Opposed would be
Nay.
nay. Okay, so the motion passes. Okay, and he'll be fine. And we'll hope that Beth will stick around in the event there is another opening. Okay. The next item is discussion and appointment of Nikki Lengel to the North Central Regional Mental Health Board through May 31st, 2020. So Nikki is a resident of the town of Suffield, and she is also the Youth Services Director. She is intimately involved with this organization anyway for us, and quickly stepped up and volunteered to be our representative to the North Central Regional Mental Health Board, so it makes a lot of sense. And I don't think we have any other volunteers at this time. I have no idea if she's party affiliated.
I'm sorry, I don't think that it matters.
I honestly do not know. Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
I'll make a motion to appoint Nikki Lendell to the North Central Regional Mental Health Board through May 31st of 2020.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, perfect. Item 13, discussion and appointment of Carlo Reali as an alternate member of the Historic District Commission to fill the remainder of Cami Gagliotti's term through April 20th, 2020. You can see Carlo's resume, I believe.
Yep.
I get confused. Is the
Mhm.
Historic Commission the ones that take care of Main Street?
The historic districts, yes, any designated historic
Do they have to
districts
be a
in town.
resident?
Some of the members do have to be residents. I can't remember the breakdown, but there is a certain amount. And right now we have,
I mean, it looks like he lives in that district.
he does.
He does,
Yes, he does. We have one Democrat, 2 Republicans, 2 unaffiliated, for a total of 5, I think, at this point. Because we have 2 vacancies right now, I believe. But only one person, is that correct, Kim? Pardon?
Filling
We have 2 vacancies and we're filling the alternate. Yes, okay. Good thing you're here. We're offering the alternates in keeping with our tradition, the alternates, the opportunity to move up into the full-time. And so right now we're filling Cammie's alternate position with Carlo.
Well, I'll make a motion to appoint Carlo Reali to, as an alternate member of the Historic Commission to fill the remainder of Cami Gagliotti's term through April 20th of 2020.
Perfect. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, 14, discussion and reappointment of Michael Stevens and Nicole Greco to the Advisory Commission on Capital Expenditures through May 31st, 2023. Both of these individuals have been serving and graciously offered to continue service on ACE.
Well, with the amount of work that takes, and the amount of work that both of them have done, I would be happy to make a motion to reappoint Michael Stevens and Nicole Greco to the Advisory Commission on Capital Expenditures through May 31, 2023.
Great. Any further discussion?
They both agreed to do it.
They did, yes. And I think it's worthy of note that Michael Stevens has been amazing on this commission. He does an incredible amount of work as a volunteer. He runs a well-oiled machine, and he keeps us so organized. And so I just want to publicly thank him for all of the work that he puts in. He's been phenomenal. And hearing no more discussion, all in favor? Aye. Great, thank you. Okay, next we have the town meeting for May 8th, 2019 to approve the fiscal year 2019-20 budget. And so if anyone would like to read that, I believe it's in our packet.
Notice is hereby given that the annual budget. For all you people out there, notice is hereby given that the annual budget meeting of the inhabitants of the town of Suffield, Connecticut, qualified to vote in town meeting will be held at the auditorium in Suffield Middle School, 350 Mountain Road, Suffield, Connecticut, on Wednesday, May 8th, 2019, at 7 p.m. for the following purposes to wit. Number 1, to consider and act upon the report and recommendations of the Board of Finance and to make such appropriations in connection therewith as may be advisable. Number 2, to consider and act upon a motion authorizing the Board of Finance to print and distribute explanatory texts concerning the budget if the budget is petitioned to referendum. Such texts may not advocate approval or disapproval of the budget and must conform to the Connecticut General Statutes, Section 9-369B. Dated at Suffield, Connecticut, this first day of May, 2019. Board of Selectmen, Melissa M. Mack, First Selectman, Mel Shavitz, Selectman, Peter Hill, Selectman, Timothy Reynolds, Selectman, Joanne Sullivan, Selectman.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. The meeting will be Suffield Middle School.
I didn't read it on this, that's why I was...
Okay. All right, next item is updates. And so I'm just going to give a couple quick ones and then give an update on the relocation of the highway garage. So Town Hall, the contractors have been selected. The process was really good, and I give a lot of credit to the Permanent Building Commission and the town attorney and Chris Matichek and Linda Zaffetti for running a really great process. They ranked the submissions based on qualifications without revealing the bid price. Then they interviewed the finalists and made a decision. For architectural engineering services, they've chosen Queensberry, Arcari, Malik, LLC, QA&M, who were the low bid at $272. I believe we had 5 different architects submit. Then for construction manager at risk, they've chosen Gilbane Building Company. Their bid in total is $523,972 with a pre-construction discount of $45,990 at acceptance of the guaranteed maximum price. So if the project goes forward, they're going to discount the fee going forward. Final contracts will be executed shortly with each of them, and a kickoff meeting can be scheduled as soon as possible so we can kind of lay out a schedule and keep things moving. Library update. I am delighted to inform you that it looks beautiful. And I want to thank you to the Library Foundation for donating another $13,000 to cover some additional extra touches in technology, audiovisual, and electrical enhancements. So this will be kind of the icing on the cake. And Fuss & O'Neill has completed their 2,145-page report and submitted it to DEEP and EPA. Luckily, we don't have to wait for sign-off for them to read it and get back to us in order to occupy the building. However, ongoing testing will be required quarterly, beginning in early July 2019. So we have decided to perform the first air quality test now, prior to moving back, since the grand reopening will be on June 29th. Clearly, we don't want to open on June 29th, test it on July 1st, and God, have anything happen. So we are going to test now and very confidently move back in on the 29th. DEEP and EPA are also requiring us to do some environmental education as part of our plan, so we are working with our consultant to understand what this will entail and if we need to hire someone to help us. Construction is progressing nicely. We are down to a very long punch list, but down to a punch list nonetheless. And the books arrived at last weekend, thanks to the Highway Department, and the librarians will be cataloging starting in a few weeks. So the progress is going really well, and thank you for everyone for their patience, and we're going to be in there soon. Relocation of the highway garage. So in our never-ending pursuit to be fiscally responsible with our taxpayer dollars, as much as I love the proposed building on the Wicks lumber site and the prospect of cleaning up the appearance of the location, I was concerned about the $3.4 million price tag to building the garage. So after much value engineering and diligent review by experts representing the town, I'm comfortable that the price is accurate to build what we needed on that site. But I expressed my opinions and my concerns to Kevin Casey and asked him to find a less expensive option, and I'm happy to say he's presenting us with one. And so I've asked him, I had a meeting with him earlier today, asked him if he could come by to kind of give us an informal update. You should know that we'll be getting a much more formal presentation at our next Board of Selectmen meeting on the 15th, which will include the entire package, including the relocation of the highway garage and the redevelopment of the parcel on Filer Place. He is going to be starting by going to the Planning and Zoning Commission on Monday to discuss everything that needs to be discussed with respect to his plans for our parcel on Filer Place. But prior to that, I wanted you to hear this now because I know that, when things change, it can be a little off-putting. However, I think that this is a really good move and will address some of the concerns that we've heard about the Wicks lumber. And so with no further ado, Kevin, thank you for coming and thank you for your update. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good evening, everybody. Melissa made it clear to me, and we had some discussions, as everybody knows, with the Board of Finance. We got feedback. People were calling it the Taj Garage. We just felt that we were doing the optimal, build out of a new building, and you would do it right rather than not do it. And if you're going to do it at all, you would do it right. And so, working closely for a long time with the guys at the DPW and design, engineers, we came up with the building. We thought it was a good price for a building that the town would own, which was a concern of the Board of Finance at the very outset, the leasing versus owning. But Melissa came back and really asked me if there was a better alternative, knowing that my goal from the outset has been to help the town get the garage off of Filer Place so that Filer Place, the beginning of development could happen at Filer Place, and that's what I'm most interested in. So, I mean, we're ready to go on the, and I think, we still had to go in front of the Board of Finance, but I suppose that nobody likes to go in knowing that they're going to have that kind of a struggle to get it approved. And so I said to Melissa, I have another building which I think can be made virtually exactly the same use in design in every way. And she asked me what it was, and I told her that it's a building that I have under contract on 1160 South Street, which is right next to the new building that was constructed between Executive Valet Parking and the new building that was constructed. And it turns out, and I didn't know this, but it turns out that the Department of Public Works actually looked at the building 4 or 5 years ago, some period of time ago, loved it. But at that time, there wasn't really any impetus to make the move off of Filer Place, and there wasn't really an appetite, from what I gather. First of all, there was no driving, force to move the DPW garage. But secondly, there was a long-term tenant in the building with no real prospect that that they could break that lease and the whole deal. So some time ago, I put the building under contract to purchase it, really as an industrial sort of spec deal. And I brought in, after talking to Melissa, I brought in Mark and JR from DPW and took a look at the building, and we realized that it's 18,000 square feet of open space, virtually exactly what we were going to construct new. So we started to do the math and see what we would have to do to retrofit the building. Building has sprinklers, but they've never been hooked up to the water and sewer that was only recently brought to the site. So that's a great opportunity. We just really have to, pay to hook up the sprinklers. The acreage would be a little tight, so we looked and working with Bill, quickly came to realize that the town owns the abutting parcel of 24 acres, much of which is impacted by wetlands. And the town's always had the notion that it would like to develop that, but it's a very challenging development site because of the wetlands. However, when the new building was constructed recently, the town, made sure that the right-of-way that goes into the new building is a shared easement for access to that parcel. There would still have to be a pretty significant wetlands crossing for any development going from South Street, a curb cut, or it wouldn't have to be a curb cut because it would share the existing one, the new one, but there'd have to be a significant wetlands crossing internally past that building. But at the rear of the building that I have, there's an upland area that allows for complete access to the upland area from the rear of our parcel. So if we were to annex, if the town were to accept this proposal and essentially add on 2 acres from the 24 that's immediately adjacent to our property, then we could situate the salt shed and probably the bins, the material bins that they use outside. Other than that, everything works. The location, the situation of where you would locate the gas tank in the back. As I said, the building is perfect. And then there's a bonus. And I brought Melissa down last week, or right before Easter, I think, and we looked at the office space in the front of the building, and there's about 11,000 plus square feet of office space on two levels. So clearly, we could accommodate the 3,500, 4,000 that we were going to use for the DPW. Yeah, yep. And then we started to talk about it, and it's an interesting opportunity for the town, because somebody at a higher pay grade than me can obviously contemplate the space needs, both in the short term, swing space or whatever you call it, like if you're doing over the town garage, but also long term, there may be some town function storage, 100 different things that the town would then own finished office space in a pretty good location. It's not the center of town, but it's actually a better location for the highway garage, I think I've been told, than in the absolute corner of town on the other side. So we looked at the whole thing, and at the end of the day, I think we can, without a firm commitment here, but in an order of magnitude type discussion, I think we can do the exact same program we were going to do, turn the building over, develop the site, meaning add on, the site work and add on what we need to for the extra space, retrofit the building, redo the office space, and turn over the building for about $1 million less than what we were talking about doing by constructing a new building. So that was probably what prompted, that's probably worth a discussion. And as we dug down into this deeper, I haven't hired him, I am going to hire him. This, by pure coincidence, the same architect who was chosen that I did not know until yesterday, it's the same architect that was chosen in your bid process for the town hall, because they've done a bunch of DPW garages throughout Connecticut and a bunch of town halls, which is why they were qualified to do, they probably won the award, from your people. So that's pretty interesting synergy, because they're going to be really deeply involved, I think, in your space needs analysis and what the optimal use of reuse of the town hall is and all that stuff. So it just was almost an omen, that like I picked those guys because they were DPW guys, but you guys picked them because they're town hall guys, and clearly we should be able to, if I'm going to present this more formally to the Board of Selectmen, then to the Board of Finance. We've been working with Bill. We're going to have to sit down with Jerry pretty soon. So it's a process that, sort of, Melissa kind of asked if there was a better alternative. There wasn't any better alternative on the Wix site, because we weren't really making a lot of money on the deal. We were doing it to get filer placed. That's part of the transaction. That was always from the get-go. So we can cut the cost of the town by, I think, about $1 million. I might be plus or minus $50 here. I don't want to be committed to it, but order of magnitude, that's what it will cost to redo that building and turn it into better, actually, than what and if we get approval to do this, I promised that we could do it within 90 days of getting approval. Well, I have a contract to buy it. It's owned by an LLC.
You mean your folks you work for have a contract?
Yes, yeah. No, not Antonacci's, no, another group of investors. But it's owned by an LLC.
Be involved in this?
Well, they won't be involved in the retrofit of that building, but they would still be involved in the Filer Place piece. Yeah. It's owned right now by a group of investors. A lot of you guys may know Danny Karstens. He's a local guy, and he's one of them. And, the building had been empty and been trying to market it. And I know for a fact that the town has contemplated, people have come to the town to try and make something work there, and it just didn't work for whatever reason. So
town would own it after.
yeah, town would own it. It'd be a 90-day it'd be a contract. We'll deliver it. Again, same premise. Turnkey. We'll do the work before the town owns it, so it's not a prevailing wage job. It's a turnkey situation.
So I think one of the really attractive pieces about this building and the extra space is that we could move everyone from 230C Mountain Road and Town Hall, while the Town Hall is being renovated, into this building and save $120,000 in annual rent. Yeah, and so I think that, we have to add that into the savings. And so on the 15th, all these numbers are going to be fleshed out. You're going to see exactly what we're spending, what we're saving, what the differences are between this building and anything we've contemplated building. For instance, this building is not going to have radiant heat. It's okay.
Right.
That was a nice to have.
We could do it. We mentioned to you that we can do anything.
We can do
but
anything.
to get to that number that we
Right.
want to do is to save. The premise here is if you're going to try and save $1 million, you may have to sacrifice some things, but not much.
But not much.
Not
So
much.
that's what we've seen. That really we were kind of astonished at we are able to get the majority of what we have in our space needs requirements with this building that's already built, and so that's an enormous savings to us.
What about the man with the driveway? Is he?
Different property.
Yeah.
We have our own access.
We have our own.
And he's on the north side. That driveway I was mentioning is actually on the north side of his new building.
Okay.
So we have access around both ways.
It'll be shared with the other town parcel if we ever sell that.
Oh, I got
So
it.
that's,
Okay.
that's.
Yeah. So, and we have to put it in an elevator. Well, there's room for 11 bays. The guys at the DPW are telling me that they would in order to keep that cost about where we're talking, there'd be new bays created in the rear of the building. It's just more cost effective. And that you were there, I said to him, we could just run garage doors down the side here. And we may do one, but, again, there's 11 now. Oh, no. In this building now, there are 3, and we're going to add 1 and make the others oversized and essentially work with them to design the building exactly the way we want.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things, some of the feedback that we've received about the Wix location is that it was too far from West Suffield. And so this will address that issue, which I think is a positive.
Yeah, so I
That's a
just,
little bit more central to town.
I just started to say,
Making this contingent on Filer?
yes.
Yes.
It's all, yes, yeah.
You're going to come, Kevin's coming to the May 15th meeting.
Yes, in the May 15th meeting, you're going to have everything about this piece of the deal and the Filer piece of the deal.
Will there be some type of drawings that we
Yeah.
can get?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So-
And so step 1 again is Kevin has had some really good conversations with Planning and Zoning Chairman Mark Winnie, with Bill, with Carl Landolina, the attorney to Planning and Zoning. And so they're going to discuss what the next steps are, what it means for the Town Center Village District today and in the future, the possible implications of any changes, whether it be in text amendment or some other form. So we're looking forward to that feedback. I plan on attending the meeting on Monday to listen, et cetera.
Yeah.
Yes, the Board of Finance is planning on attending our meeting. Yes, absolutely. So I want everyone to have the same information and to be able to ask questions openly.
Yeah, it'll be, to your point, and I want to get this out there before it'll come up Monday night, we're going to be in front of planning and zoning, and as Melissa said, I've had really long substantive conversations with the chairman, and we worked together with Bill, the zoning attorney, Carl Landolina, and my attorney to come up with a way we believe to allow us to develop the site the way we need to develop it. And it'll be part of the process of talking it all out. But in that process, and this is important, I want to bring it up tonight to you guys, we really feel that there's an undercurrent that because a plan was drawn for all of Filer Place 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that there's this premise, and it's not ill-conceived, but it's not practical, that all of Filer Place has to be done at once or decided upon at once. And the reality is that's not going to happen. Who thought that? There's a lot of talk about that. Yeah, a lot of talk about that. Well, I agree. I agree, but I want to.
There's a plan that had been commissioned by the town that included the Lorenos property. And so it put an idea out there that it could all happen at the same time, but it's not practical. We can't be at the mercy of a private party, and they should be able to do whatever they want with their property, but we can't wait until they're ready to come to the table.
And lastly, I'm just going to say that I think by doing what we're going to propose to do, we're actually going to help be the catalyst for something else that happens across the street. You know,
I'm not clear, why is this property on South Street contingent on Filer? Why are they connected?
Because I own it, I will own it, I have it under contract, and I'm not inclined to do it unless Filer Place is the cost to the town. You know.
Why wouldn't we want that?
Yeah.
In other words,
there's a lot of pushback I'm hearing in town. They don't want to do that. Who doesn't want to do that? People that talk to them. Why not? They'd like to see other options. They'd like to see us.
Yeah, no, listen,
Well,
and
that could be. I'm just giving you some feedback.
No, I think one of the, the critical
appreciate
pieces that will come forward on the 15th is that they're going to be taking the current highway garage with all of its environmental unknowns. And as we've experienced, and we are continuing to experience in a 2,173-page document, that's something that we don't want to deal with anymore. And so by using the TIF district, which is something that we put in place to have an economic development tool to repay Kevin's group to take this subject to an environmental liability and repay himself maybe over time, that's kind of a burden hand for the town.
yeah, I can appreciate if somebody says, well, just because frankly, just because the guy's doing the town garage, why does he get to be the guy to do the thing? Well, somebody else should do the garage then. It's just part of the cost of doing it.
Right.
It's,
One of our contractors.
Nobody's lined up to do Filer Place, so
Right.
they're not waiting in line.
And obviously, the value of the properties have to be equalized.
Yeah.
And so that's part of the process in the next 2 weeks, is to come to you with the financials that support doing this. But there is value in the risk that we will not be taking as a town. And it gets immediately, at least with the current proposal of potentially 45 apartment/condominium type of housing, it gets some density where we've been told by developers, we'd love to look at your Filer Place, but you don't have any people in Suffield. And so now we're putting some built-in, maybe 90 people that maybe would attract a coffee shop across the street or a restaurant or who knows what. And so that, to me, is very attractive, to have a commitment from a developer at the get-go who will be bound to do exactly what they say they're going to do. Because that's another thing, is we're going to put, requirements. Maybe we put a bond in place where you have to perform to get what we need done and what we are expecting to be done. And so, these are the things that we will flesh out over the next several weeks. But I wanted you to hear kind of the new change in thinking, that it was going to be much more fiscally responsible. Because again, this is In my opinion, this is not a garage project. This is a redevelopment of Filer Place project. And so I want to spend as little as we can on the garage piece to be a catalyst for the rest
But
of it.
Joey-
And so that's
right.
the point.
I would suggest this. I went down to Windsor Sunday night to Union Street Avenue, and we looked out across the street because the building's been over
Yeah.
on the inside of the tracks.
Yes.
Then we noticed these apartments that were just used in the building. I'm not sure how many are in the heights. They're four stories. If they're building up their town, if they're helping the downtown area.
Right, right.
So lots is doing the same thing.
Yes.
If we have something that comes in, we come in 2 years ago, people tear it apart.
Right.
And
So-
that's why you got buildings falling apart in the center.
We're missing the boat.
Nobody wants to come to Suffield.
Exactly. And this is a change, and this is a complicated deal, and people are going to, we're going to spend a lot of time really making it understandable so that people might be willing to take a chance on development. Because we can only control what we own, and this is our opportunity. We have a willing developer ready to take a risk on us. And, you know, I would encourage us to keep an open mind, and if the numbers work, to consider it. And so, and we have to sell it, exactly. So.
You have to go to Dunkin' Donuts.
I plan on having 3 showings at Dunkin' Donuts.
I think Joanne-
The 6
Joanne-
a.m., the 8 a.m., and the 2 p.m.
I think Joanne makes a really good point about the timing, too. We were looking, as this thing dragged on, let's say the Board of Finance really pushed back, and even if we were successful, it would be like midsummer, when, by the time, then you're really talking about, okay, we start the whole process, we start the transaction, it'd be next year. This pushes this whole deal up so that by the end of this year, but by the fall, that it's very feasible. The DBW is moved, and Filer Place demolition and environmental cleanup begins, so that next year, what's actually starting next year is the development of that, and not a year behind, because it's right there. That building needs, it's doable, you know. It's 2 floors in the front, and it's 1 giant warehouse in the back, you know. Yeah.
Now you have to find somebody for Wix.
Well,
Right. That's another, exactly, right, right.
I know you, Kevin, too well.
Yeah.
I had dinner with, I had a meeting recently with
This is being
Frank.
recorded. I advise you that even though there's only a few people in this room.
No, but yeah,
Okay.
We'll see you on May 15th.
yeah, exactly.
We'll see you on May.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kevin, for the update. A couple more items. In the interest of time, I'm going to go very fast. Suffield Community Aid will be hosting its annual food drive, Help Stamp Out Hunger, on Saturday, May 11th. Donations stay in Suffield and help those in our community in need. The effort is held in conjunction with the National Association of Letter Carriers. Please leave non-perishable food donations near your mailbox where your mail carrier will pick them up. I just want to give, that is on Saturday, May 11th, so next Saturday. I want to give recognition to Nikki Lengel, who has been really doing an amazing job holding programming for parents, for students. This last week, she had Kate Cummings, who is a state trooper, come in and do a performance, I don't want to call it a performance, a presentation for the 6th grade class in this school. And then later in the evening, for any parents, we broadly broadcast it, widely publicized it, and the turnout was not wonderful, which is a sign of our town doesn't typically attend these types of things. But I have to say, it was amazing. It was such a great presentation on social media and internet safety, because, you know, I learned so much. I left terrified, but empowered, because I know what to do. I know what to look for to be able to keep my children safe. And so I want to give her so much credit, and I would encourage the public, when we're putting something on and it's sponsored by Youth Services, I can assure you it's going to be top-notch and you should attend. And having said that, you wanted to mention something that's happening tomorrow.
Another project that she has put together is Chris Herron is going to be doing he's speaking to the high school tomorrow afternoon and tomorrow night. I don't have it in front of me. He's speaking. He's a former NBA player and became addicted, I believe, to opiates or pills. And this is a story of how he lost everything and how he came back. And it's a story of addiction and overcoming that. And again, another great program that she's done.
He's been here before, hasn't he?
He has.
Yes, yeah. So I would encourage everyone to attend. couple more items. I'll keep the details short, and I'll follow up with this next time. But since I started in 2015, a lot of people have come to me sporadically with great ideas for improving Suffield's recycling, sustainability, and general environmental efforts. So Kim and I are in the process of reaching out to all of those individuals and seeing if there's any interest in forming an environmental sustainability committee. And if there is interest, I'll come to the Board of Selectmen to form the committee with a mission statement, something along the lines of to consider and make recommendations, including plans for execution related to environmental sustainability for the town of Suffield. The types of things that we would consider would be waste reduction, composting, banning single-use plastics, recycling, beautifying, having cleanup days, environmental protection issues, talking about how we can better afford and manage the household hazardous waste day, stormwater management, medication disposals, land preservation, education, the trash to art policies, getting to the roots of sustainability, composting, anti-fracking ordinances, et cetera. These are the types of things that people have brought to us because of staffing, personnel limitations. We never get to them. And so we're thinking that perhaps similar to what we did with the technology committee, we can get a committee together, they can give us one or two of these little items to do at a time, and we can make some progress. So stay tuned for that. I look forward to hearing your thoughts. And if you know anyone who would be interested, I know a lot of the local churches have environmental committees. Please send them along to Kim. Finally, we have some departures from the Suffield Police Department. As we've discussed, Captain McKee has resigned effective April 20th, 2019 to pursue other opportunities. We wish him well in his future endeavors. And I want to congratulate Officer Richard Devon, who has decided to retire effective today. We want to thank him for his years of service as a supernumerary and full-time police officer, and we wish him health and happiness in his retirement. Celebrations in his honor are being planned with details to follow. And I have no other further updates. Does anyone have anything?
Two quick things. I just noticed that on the agenda there wasn't public comment at the beginning. So I just pointed out.
That was an oversight.
But just one, and I think Joanne's going to smile at this. My wife has been reviewing all the town reports for the last 50 years in preparation for the book that they're going to publish. And they're fascinating, some of the stuff. But one of the issues in 1976, I don't know, Tim, were you in town in 76? One of the big issues was the kids for Bicentennial wanted a gazebo on the green, which we have.
Oh, no, 76, I was not.
Okay. It was tremendously controversial.
You're kidding, having a gazebo on the green?
Having a gazebo on the green was very controversial. There was all kinds of uproar that it would create traffic problems and that the hoodlum kids would hang out at the gazebo. Sort of like Music Man putting a pool hall in the city. So you think about some of the issues that we deal with today.
Yeah.
A gazebo was a big problem.
And now they have their prom pictures taken out.
Yeah, exactly, right.
You're right.
Pretty cool.
That's a good way to end. And does anyone have any other comments? Okay, now we have public comment. Any public comment? And I didn't even notice that we didn't have it at the beginning. I don't know what we did there. You did? I didn't even notice it. It was an oversight. Our apologies to the 7 people who were here.
Well, they all left.
They did.
Make
Okay.
a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you.